I think what we can do is just now that it's a little bit after 3, we'll go ahead and get started. So since we do have a quorum, at least on Zoom here, I'll go ahead and call roll. Greg Walsh,
I'm here.
thank you. Danny Steyer,
Present.
Marcia Roby,
Here.
Matt Fogarty,
Yeah.
Kaylee Bentz,
Yeah, I'm here.
Shelby Leon,
Here.
thank you. Hi, Lida. I'm gonna grab another seat. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're hi. Look like somebody stabbed me, huh? Oh, it looks like it hurts. No, it doesn't hurt. Oh, look at
I
me.
got cataract surgery.
Oh.
I'm Lida.
How are you, Lida? I'm Susan Duran.
Oh, Susan.
Oh, I'm Wanda Carpenter.
Nice to meet you both.
Oh, Susan's here.
Hey, completely unprepared.
Oh, good. Sounds like me. Yeah, me as well. I only brought one binder today. I did not pack my whole thing. And of course Patty asked me if I had stuff and I went, no. I didn't pack my 40 pounds of paper.
Bad for your back to carry all that paper around.
They'll take care of that.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah.
No problem. There's some brief introductions here in a moment. All right, so I had Shelby, Dax Albrecht.
Here.
Great, thank you. Lida Scoggin.
Here.
Great. I've got Lida in the room with me here. She's just off camera. All right, and with that, we do have a quorum, and we have additional participants today. We have Kess Porter, Sherry Pryor, Dan Kearns, Susan Dorn, Wanda Carpenter, and Wanda, Susan, and Dan are with me here from the IVCSD. They're in the office with me here. So sorry about the setup, the audiovisual setup, but I think we'll be able to make do with what we got, and I think everybody can hear, so that's important too. I do have an agenda change that I'd like to recommend. So we had on here today a grant request from the Plymouth Sun. However, I'm recommending that we table that on today's agenda until the 21st. I met today with Kim Dufour and David Little, both from North Valley Community Foundation. And actually, the three of us had some additional questions that we wanted to get clarified before you all see the next grant proposal. So Kim put their grant in a draft proposal again, like in a draft status. The issues that came up were in their budget. They had money allocated for a managing editor and a copy editor. And the clarification is that they actually didn't intend for that to be part of the budget request. However, it was part of their funding that they already have allocated. So that was one question that we just wanted them to clean that up a little bit. And then also, they do intend to get matching funds from North Valley Community Foundation. So in terms of their narrative and then their budget request, that would need to be amended. So I'm going to meet with them on Friday to do that and to clarify, just to make sure that it's a little bit cleaner with regard to specifically that the money that they're asking from both entities, so that it's just not as confusing. And so I emailed them today. They're fine with that. They're able to do that. And so we'll move that to 2 weeks from today. So with that's my recommendation for the change to the agenda. May I have a motion to approve today's agenda, please?
Also move, Marcia.
I'll second.
Marcia, Danny, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
thank you. Kaylee and Dax,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you. Are there any opposed? None. Okay, as you recall, we did have a meeting scheduled for June 16th. However, we were not able to conduct that meeting due to no quorum. And so the June 2nd meeting minutes they still need to be approved. May I have a motion to approve those June 2nd meeting minutes?
Also move.
Lyda? And a second?
That was
I'll
Shelby.
second.
That was Shelby.
Oops, Shelby, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. All right, thank you. All right, first item on our agenda, public input. Anybody not on the steering committee, does anybody have anything they'd like to offer? Okay, hearing none, we can move right into business. So the first item on our agenda today is a grant request from the Indian Valley Community Services District. So I have some of the board members here with me today. Chairwoman Wanda Carpenter, Susan Duran, and Dan Kearns. So this grant request, it's $100,000 specifically from the DFC. And then the North Valley Community Foundation would match that with $100,000 for the Greenville Park project that's in partnership with the Greenville Little League as well as the Indian Valley Recreation Parks District. When we discussed this last time, the issues surrounded the general manager, Adam Cox, and then also the board itself, and just having the correct points of contact identified to carry this project forward, and to make sure that we had clarity on that. So the grant that I sent you still has the old information. I emailed Wanda a couple of weeks ago, as well as Patty Nort, their controller. And I'm gonna have to catch up with them to actually get into the system to update user information. And I talked with Kim today on how to do that specifically. The organization itself, IVCSD, they have a user account in the grant portal. And Kim was walking me through a little bit on how we can update that user information to reflect personnel that are currently at the CSD. Just so that when and if the grant does get approved, that the points of contact are understood, and that the funding stream and who's accepting the funds and how that process will move forward is clear as well. Danny, I know that you had some specific questions around the project itself that you put it into an email. And Kaylee, you had some of those answers. Kaylee, just because you've been involved with this project from the IVRPD perspective, if there's anything that you wanted to share on that at this time.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that the IVCSD approved up to $750,000 for the project. I don't anticipate it costing that much. There's $150,000 in there for like a concrete interior, which someone had brought that idea up, and I got a rough idea of what that would cost. I don't think that's something that's desired by the community, honestly, and it's definitely not something that's required. So if you back the $150,000 expense for that out, it really should be closer to the $600,000 cost, which I think is in that scope of work that you sent out, Patrick. So the cost, if we have 100,000 from Little League, 200 from Parks and Rec, and 100 from IVCSD right now, we're about 200,000 short, and that's where the grant from the DFC and the North Valley Community Foundation would end up coming in, and that would have enough money to finish the project, minus that 150 for the concrete inside, which I don't think anybody wants anyway.
Okay, and so on the budget, it's identified, and for those of you that are looking at it at home, sort of the last line on page 10, it says optional concrete in inner area for aesthetics, quote unquote, safety, etc. And that's the item that Kaylee's talking about right now.
Right, and that addresses the item that I brought up, so that completely follow what Katie brought up there, so that fits.
Yeah, and so for NVCF, their concern with regard to the $100,000 that they could potentially fund is that their concern was that given the money that's been committed to the Greenville Rancheria, and we're still kind of uncertain about when and if they're gonna need that money. That's a full $600,000 that NVCF has sort of locked up, waiting for that project to take place. However, they are receiving back, North Valley Community Foundation, they're receiving $100,000 back from the previous grant that was completed for Hope Crisis Response Network and Copper Creek. Since that project never came to fruition in the way that it was designed back in the winter of 22, Plymouth Strong is remitting back $100,000 to North Valley Community Foundation. So that's the money that they could put towards this to match the DFC contribution from the DFC Wildfire Fund. So the way that would play out is that this overall $200,000 for the CSD, $100,000 would come from the DFC, and that's what you all would be responsible for to approve, modify, or deny today. And then the NVCF, their executive committee, they would have to review the same grant, and then allocate their portion. But again, if it got a favorable response from the steering committee here, then it would more than likely receive a favorable response from North Valley Community Foundation. Would you all like to elaborate on?
We just got this information last night, the actual grant.
Oh,
Just
okay.
saw it and read it, and IVCSD is applying for a grant from Dixie Fire
Yeah.
for 100,000. And then we would put in another 100,000, no?
Well, okay, so the way that this grant was previously written was that it would be $200,000 in total coming from the Dixie Fire Collaborative and the North Valley Community Foundation. What becomes a little bit confusing there is that even though the North Valley Community Foundation is our fiscal sponsor, we operate two separate funds. North Valley Community Foundation has all their own money that they can put towards Dixie Fire projects. The DFC has its money to put forth Dixie Fire projects. However, typically, if there's something that is community driven and that the DFC steering committee is able to approve or what have you, then the North Valley Community Foundation usually matches those funds so that no one fund takes a huge hit at one time. So it kind of balances things out a little bit. And so the issue that was raised was that the way it was originally drafted is it had Christy Gorbett as a signer and Adam Cox as a signer. That's my misunderstanding. I talked to Andy Myers a couple of weeks ago about this, and my understanding was that it was understood at that time, but I could be wrong about that.
No, we know they signed, but
Okay.
like I said, that's the first time we saw the actual paper.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we knew about it, but that's about it. And then, the scope of work and the engineering and all that planning, what's the status of that? Are we still just with the colored list?
Yeah, that's my basic understanding. Kaylee, do you have any more insight onto the scope of work and the engineering around the actual project pieces?
So there's no engineering required, no permits from the county required. It's a very simple project, actually. What you have in front of you is very close. I mean, some of the numbers those were rough estimates that I had gathered as far as the cost, estimated cost for those projects. The more I look into it, the more it could go up or down a little bit here and there, but it's not going to be anything drastic. So what you're looking at is still, as of right now, I suppose it's somewhat of a living document, because once the bids start coming in, things could change a little bit and we could see that it's coming in way under budget. I don't anticipate it going over budget, but if the numbers come in a little differently, then the total cost may change slightly, but there's no way I'm gonna be able to accurately assess the exact cost of this whole project. So what you're looking at is still very accurate. There's not a whole lot that's changed, if anything, really.
And there was a component in there from the Greenville Rotary as well that was contributing something.
Yeah, so Rotary decided that I met with them not too long ago. They decided that they will redo the snack shack. You're right. I forgot about that piece. So they're going to donate. I don't know if they have any money to donate, but they're going to volunteer, and we've got them as we speak, I believe, signing all the volunteer agreements and all that stuff. They're going to come in and they're going to do so a few things to the snack shack that Little League wanted to done in order for them to donate their $100,000. They make a lot of money off of the snack shack, so they wanted specifically some stuff done in there, and that Rotary decided that's right up their alley, so they're going to help out with that. So that may actually decrease the overall cost some, not because they're donating any money, but because they're donating their time.
Yeah,
which I think is fantastic. I love it.
yeah. Danny Starr, you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to go back to the question about the North Valley's contribution and that 100K coming back from the Crisis and Hope Crisis Project. I would think that they should only have 50K or 50,000 to on discretion. We should split the difference coming back, so we should be designated where the other 50K goes. I mean, if money is coming back, it should come back equally to the partners.
So I think, if I remember correctly, the contribution to that original fund was the North Valley Community Foundation had the preponderance of the funds, and then there was the Funders Roundtable, which included money that United Way of Northern California contributed, Red Cross, Plumas Bank, UMCOR, and there was another Sobrato Philanthropies. A lot of the organizations are listed on the spot sign at the same time that some of the money was allocated to the spot. And so of that $100,000, I believe 75 is directly allocated to North Valley Community Foundation, and then the 25,000 remainder is a mix of that Funders Roundtable, of which the DFC did contribute to, is my understanding. But that was before I got here, well before.
I have a number of $59,825 that was contributed by DFC to Hope Crisis.
Can you, yeah, but, and then determining on how that money's been spent already in that first phase of the project. Can you say that number again, Danny?
$59,825.
Okay.
So I just think a portion should come back to DFC as well.
Let's see if Kim was going to.
That was for Hope Crisis Network. That was for the salary for 2 years, the truck, the trailer, and tools. And Almanar put in same as we did,
Right.
American Red Cross, and then
You're
50.
you're not. It's fine if you're not muted, but just to make you aware.
Oh, I was checking my notes from the Funders Roundtable for Hope Crisis Network. And it was Almanor Foundation, the American Red Cross, DFC. I have 59,285, which is the same that Almanor put in. And then North Valley Community Foundation put in money from their Wildlife Relief and Recovery Fund. So that grant total I had as $269,650 for Hope Crisis Network.
Okay.
And
I'm going to see
they put in,
if Kim can call in, and then we'll circle back on that. As it relates to the $100,000 that the DFC has currently, though, in order to allocate to this project, what other questions do we have?
I have a clarifying question. So this project, all these different funds are essentially just offsetting the cost of this work so that CSD is not responsible for it. Is that?
Yeah, it's essentially a donation to the CSD so that it doesn't have to be borne completely by the CSD, so that Little League, Recreation and Parks, can utilize the facility.
And that $100,000 grant that would specifically go to the CSD is just a furtherance of that. That's our specific.
Yes, it's money that would go to the CSD to be able to pay out for this
It's
project?
a piece of it. So the IVRPD has $200,000 that we're going to put into an account with the CSD. The CSD has $100,000 they're going to transfer into that same account. Little League has $100,000 they're putting into that same account. So that's 400,000. And the other 200 we're asking comes from the DFC and North Valley Community Foundation, totaling 600,000.
Awesome. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been working hard on this and putting this all together. It seems like it could be a great thing. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, Kim DeFore, she just called in. Thank you, Kim.
Sorry, my other meeting ran late.
No, that's okay. So we're discussing the overall grant request from the CSD, IVCSD for the park proposal. And specifically the sharing of funds, the $100,000 that would come from the DFC, and then the other potential $100,000 that would come from North Valley Community Foundation and I was explaining a little bit of how North Valley Community Foundation may be able to recoup roughly $100,000 from Plymouth Strong because of the Copper Creek / Hope Crisis Response Project. And we were talking about the DFC contribution of that original fund for $59,825. Danny had asked if the DFC would get that money back based off of what was coming back in its entirety from Plymouth Strong.
So the hard thing, okay, so I'm not exactly sure where 59,000 came from. I think, and I can look it up here. The hard thing with the Copper Creek grant is it was a 270. Let me before I get too far down the road, let me make sure I've got it right here. I believe the grant that was made right after the campfire to do the Copper Creek renovation project, that grant was a $275,000 grant. And that grant, at that, and all you can do is make the best decisions you can make at the time with what you know at that point. We had hoped the Hope Crisis Response Network was going to come in and build 12 volunteer homes in the community. That's where all the volunteers were going to be housed on top of the other volunteers that are utilizing space or it being used for disaster space. So that grant, when it went out on 8/18/2022, it went out by what we had at that time called a Funders Roundtable. And the Funders Roundtable was a variety of groups that were supporting Dixie Fire recovery. And so they listened to the proposal, and that 275,000 was made up of a grant from 75,000 from the Almanor Foundation Wildfire Fund, 50,000 from American Red Cross, 25,000 from Community Foundation of Northern Nevada, which is really Plymouth Bank. That's where Plymouth Bank put their funds. North Valley Community Foundation, our Dixie Fire Fund, and 75,000 from the Dixie Fire Collaborative. So now what we've learned is that the project didn't pan out exactly like everyone thought, and it wasn't all used or needed. Some of it got used and was needed, but that there is going to be around 100,000 coming back. So then the question to us as the person that administered the Funders Roundtable is, how do we give that money back to some groups that aren't even in existence anymore or who've moved on to other disasters? So we've had this happen like with Red Cross, and with Red Cross, they're typically like, as long as it gets used on the disaster for a project that's supporting that disaster, we're fine with that. So at this stage, the hard thing is knowing how to take that $100,000 and put it in Dixie Fire recovery in your community. And so in our minds, it kind of feels like, okay, this is a community project that's going to support the entire community. Do we go back and ask every single funder, are you okay if we use your money towards this? And do we give the money back in percentages, some groups gave a little and some groups gave more. This is where like our attorneys and stuff come in and say, 150,000 was spent on the project. There's 100,000 left over. So, which fund does it go back to? Does it go back to the ones that are still around? Does it, do we just make sure that the donor intent is being followed? And donors wanted to support Dixie Fire Recovery. That's why they gave this money. So that's where the thought of, doesn't really matter whether we put it in your Dixie Fire Fund or our Dixie Fire Fund. It matters that it gets used to support Dixie Fire Recovery.
Danny, you have your hand up?
Yeah, the reason I brought this up was to add weight to put it to Dixie Fire related stuff within what we're doing. So it was just to try to help sway the North Valley Fund to go ahead and put it into this reliable project. So that's the only reason I brought it up, is I wanted to say, hey, we've got at least 75K of interest in this, so why can't we pull it into this project that we believe in? That's the only reason I brought it up.
And we think this is a great project, and have no issues at all taking that full 100,000 and putting it towards this project. Where we're hung up a little bit, as you all know, is, and we're very transparent, we have 638,000 in our Dixie Fire Fund. But we've made this verbal commitment to Greenville Rancheria to loan them 600,000 to help do the medical center. So in a perfect world, that would have been done. That money would have been back. We would be spending it all right now. At least that's what we thought. But we're not yet. And we're hoping Greenville Rancheria gets a good PG&E settlement and doesn't need our money at all. And then we can continue to fund these grants. So we too think that using that full 100,000 to go back to go to this Greenville Park totally seems like it makes sense. And you guys voting that way too, then it would be like at least your board and our board saying that we all believe that we're following donor intent, that this is a really positive project for rebuilding in Greenville, and that, we see it supporting the community.
Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, so I guess in order to, remove a possible cloud, it's kind of hovering around that additional 100K there. There is 100K still left around that we could, quote unquote, bridge if needed, the North Valley Fund. I'm just saying that 100K should not be a block as far as moving forward with a total of a 200K commitment to this project. So I'm just speaking from the financial side.
Okay. What other questions, comments, concerns? Are there any? Okay. Well, with that, would someone like to make a motion to approve $100,000 to the Indian Valley Community Services District for the Greenville Park grant request?
This is Dax. I have a quick question before we do that.
Sure.
So do we have a point of contact for this?
Yeah, let me, in case you, so I'll be working with both Wanda Carpenter, their chair, and Patty North, their controller, on updating their user profile in the system so that it reflects accurately to do that. At least that was the information that was provided.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have a point of contact at
the Indian Valley Community Services District.
correct.
So we'll have a primary and a secondary.
Okay.
And who's the project manager? I think we know, but I'd like to find out who the project manager is, so we might know.
So at one of the CSD, this is Kaylee, sorry, one of the CSD meetings, maybe a month and a half ago or so, I requested that, given all the turmoil and things that were up in the air, that they go ahead and give me control over the project, and I'm going to be, once it gets going, I'll be reporting back to them. But I don't know if project manager is the correct verbiage, but I'm the one that's kind of
Coordinating.
handling most of it. Yeah, coordinating most of it.
Coordinator, right. All right, good. That's what I was looking for. Thanks, Kaylee.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Dax?
Yeah, thanks.
Would anybody like to put forth a motion to approve $100,000 to the Indian Valley Community Services District for the Greenville Park project?
I'll put that forward.
Matt Fogarty,
Yep.
I'll second it.
second. Lyda Scoggin, second. We'll do a roll call vote. Danny Steyer,
Yes.
Greg Walsh,
Yes.
Marsha Roby,
Yes.
Matt Fogarty,
Yes.
Kaylee Bentz.
I need to abstain from this one.
Yep. Shelby Leon,
Yes.
Dax Albrecht,
Yes.
And over here.
and Lyda Scoggin.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm usually on the screen.
All right, that motion stands approved for $100,000 to the Indian Valley Community Services District for the Greenville Park project.
Yay.
All right,
Right.
very good.
So Patrick, it probably would be the most clean from an audit standpoint if you all also wanted to entertain a motion that you agreed that your original funds that went to Plymouth Strong for Copper Creeks could now be repurposed to be used for the Greenville Park. And then if we have that motion and then our group makes the same motion, we'll have more than enough funds to take that 100,000 and put it towards this project.
Okay. So motion
You could
to,
say 50,000 of the funds that you gave to, and then we'll take 50 from basically, it'd be like when that money comes back in, we'll put it back in each pot and then spend it right back out again.
yep, trying to figure out what the most concise way to articulate that is. Let's see here. Motion to approve.
Maybe,
And Kim, does it need to be 50,000?
no, it could just be the funding, just that you're funding.
Yeah. So motion to approve the reallocation of previous Hope Crisis Response and Copper Creek project funding.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Hope Crisis, it'd just be the Copper Creek,
Okay.
Plymouth Strong Copper Creek project.
Motion to approve reallocation of previous Plymouth Strong Copper Creek. I gotta get this right, so I go back and watch the video. It's Plymouth Strong Copper Creek project. Reallocation of previous Plymouth Strong Copper Creek project money to the remaining half of the grant request. Is that-
If I can add into your verbiage there, I think it's important that you say this is any money that's returned from, you're not reallocating
Right.
all of the money, it's just the returned money, right?
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take any help I can get. Returned money from previous Plymouth Strong Copper Creek project for the remaining balance of the CSD grant request. Would somebody like to put that motion forward?
I'll put it forward as the treasurer.
Thank you, Danny.
I'll second Dax.
Thank you, Dax. We'll go again around the horn. Danny Steyer,
I approve. Yes.
Greg Walsh? Greg Walsh,
Yes.
Marcia Roby,
Yes.
Shelby Lamb,
Yes.
Matt Fogarty,
Yes.
Kaylee Benz abstaining,
Yeah, abstain.
Dax Albrecht,
Yes.
Gladys Scoggin.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll type that up now. It'll be clear as mud. All right. Great, thank you all very much. All right. Moving on. So you're more than welcome to continue to join us. Wanda, I did send you and Patty an email.
Okay.
I can work around your schedules this week. It's probably better to sit down at a computer and we can go through the grant module, what it looks like, and then we can just update. It's just a username and password that needs to be updated.
Okay, are you gonna be here tomorrow?
Yeah,
Cause I need to go do some stuff next door.
okay.
The time's kind of good.
Yeah, maybe,
10? I like 10.
10 should work. Let me just
Okay.
double check that. I'm not.
No.
Thanks for bearing with us here for a moment. Yeah. 10 o'clock. Sure.
Okay, cool.
All right. All right. Moving on to the next grant request that we have is from the Greenville Rotary grant request for a trailer for $5,516. Yeah.
You dismissed, okay.
Yeah. And that's old information, FYI.
Oh, I just can't help but stare at maps.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was sitting at her house since last year. And she graciously brought it back to me, but it's
Probably long since useless, but
yeah.
I brought it back anyway.
Yeah.
So, excuse
Well,
me.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
We did 200.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the trailer request. So Danny, I know you had some questions around this one, but let me just give a brief overview. So if we recall, the Greenville Rotary had a successful inaugural Century Ride this year that they planned, and had roughly, I think, 150 riders or so that participated.
129 that pre-registered and 3 that showed up that day.
So 132.
132, outstanding. For a Century Ride here in Indian Valley. And with it, they purchased a lot of like one-time equipment to be able to execute the actual to run the actual race itself, or the ride itself. And they're requesting $5,516 for a trailer that would be able to hold the equipment that they purchased for that event. Sherry, Kess, since we have you right here, is there anything that you wanted to elaborate on with regard to what that will serve and how that will help?
Well, I'll answer Danny's questions first because he wanted to
Yes.
he wanted to know how many riders we had, which was 132.
Yep.
And as far as meals served, we had them prepare 200 dinner meals with the culinary class at the high school. And lunch, I don't remember, and Gay Rubke hasn't gotten back to me. Not everybody went to the Genesee store for lunch out there. So we were trying to recall, they had sandwiches made at the Mercantile in Westwood, and we were trying to recall how many sandwiches they put together for the lunch. It might be,
It was less than the total number because some people only did the Taylorsville ride, the 25 miles, so they didn't go to the store, they didn't get the lunch. And so we charged less for that ride than we did for people doing the metric century or the full century. But I don't know, as Sherry was saying, how many meals we actually paid for at the lunch stop.
right. I would say around maybe 130 because we did feed all the volunteers at the rest stops. So between 130, maybe 150
Right.
for lunch.
Right.
Okay.
And our hope is, the part of the reason for this grant is that we hope to be able to do this every year. And we're looking at hopefully building it. This is the first year we've done it since 2019 when the chamber had it. And we gave surveys to everybody that came in for the meal. And many of the people said that they were coming back next year, and they had lots of complimentary things to say. So we're hoping that with the second year and with a good first year that we'll have bigger numbers next year, and be able to get closer to that cap of 300 that we set.
Okay.
Yeah. My reason for the question is the additional funds that were, I saw is earmarked for the additional 150 riders. You know, because when you look at your budget, the budget item says so there's $4,500 for meals for the riders, and and even in the when the narrative says that it backs them down a little bit, but it does specifically say for looking at 300 riders.
That's right, because right up until the ride, we didn't know how many riders we'd get. So we needed to budget for the 300 that we set the cap for. And then when it became obvious we wouldn't have that many, we were able to back off on the number of meals that we actually bought.
So wasn't the quote 200 meals at $20 per person? So that's 4,000 right there that went to the culinary program. Am I wrong? We did 200 dinners. She charged $20 per person, so that's $4,000 for the meal there.
I think that's right.
Okay.
I'm looking up that previous grant request.
I don't think I have that one.
So it looked like you have
It would have been 9,000 for lunch and the dinner for
okay.
300 riders. So
Right.
that's right. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm going. That's looking at that budget, looking at the request against that budget, was saying that you needed $5,000 additional. So I'm the bean counter here. So of that money that wasn't used, shouldn't some of that be able to defray the cost of the trailer? Or the other question is, what was done with the money that was not used to purchase the lunches or the dinners? That's
Right.
the
So,
question.
Danny, the answer to that is that for years now, we've been putting money into the community and using up funds that we've had because we haven't had big fundraisers. So now that we have a fundraiser, and because we had donations from various groups, we actually had some profit, so that we'll be able to put more money back into the community next year. And hopefully every year we'll be able to make some profit here to pay for some of the projects that we have in the community, rather than just using up money that we have. So there definitely was some profit for us as a Rotary Club. All of our money ends up going back to various community projects. So yes, we could take money out of this and do that. We just would do that much less in the community.
Right. All I'm looking for is just like that acknowledgement and a statement that says that the funds that weren't used to purchase the meals will be put to good use X, Y, Z.
Okay.
Okay.
That's, I have to do that as, financially
Oh, sure. It's a good
managing
question.
the funds. All right. So I think that was the direction of my questions that were in that direction. So I think I'm satisfied with your response.
Okay. Gay just got back to me with a text, and she said we served 120 meals to riders and 18 volunteers at the Genesee store for a total of 138 folks by her reckoning.
Great.
Good.
And so the gear and equipment that will be stored in the trailer, is there any opportunity to be able to loan that to another group that might have a similar event, or is that something?
Well, not the trailer itself because it's full of the stuff, but what we're able to do now is like at Gold Digger Days, Rotary in the crushable lot. We'll be cleaning up the lot, and we're using all the pop-ups that we were able to buy because of this event to do a cooling center for everybody at Gold Diggers.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
And so yes, it'll be used for other events.
It's
Matt,
kind of like sorry, Patrick, it's kind of like a storage locker at this point. It's
Yeah.
Dave and Tawny's trailer that we put everything in. So we need to get a different trailer to store all our stuff in. And you're right, there will be community access to it. So
Okay. Matt, you have your hand up?
Yeah. So I store some things around the hotel, and I use a shipping container, a 20-foot shipping container, and it's great because it's totally weather tight, it's very secure, and it's zero maintenance needed. In addition, I often rent trailers from U-Haul, and they're serviced by U-Haul. They're about $20 or $30 a day. They're very, very cheap for the occasional time when you have to move things. Have you considered doing a container plus trailer rental deal instead of buying the trailer, especially given how it sounds like it'll be used for long-term storage?
So no, partly because this way we can move it around so that it isn't always stuck at one person's house, where a shipping container, once you place it somewhere, it's there. We don't have rotary property, so Rotarians are able to take the trailer and store it at different people's houses as they're willing to have it there.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments?
I guess just one quick, Patrick, I did see that you had made that it's only for $5,516. It's just that the request was put in it for $7,000.
The 7,000, that was the previous one for the
Right,
same.
no, but it was left in the document. The document still says 7,000. But
Oh, I thought on the agenda I put the,
well, yes, you put on the agenda. On the agenda, you see the 5,000 number, but the document itself says 7,000 because it was not edited.
I
It
sent
was
you.
not edited property.
No, I sent you the wrong one then.
and it says, please provide an exact, this is North Valley Community Foundation's portal questions. Please provide an exact dollar amount requested, typical grants between 1,000 and 5,000. And it says 5,500 on the one that Tawny completed.
The one that maybe I emailed, did I send you the wrong grant request? Maybe I sent you the one that they had from the previous event.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as,
Yeah, the
No,
one I
it
see,
says
the one I
student
see in my
training.
system is 5,500.
The one that I sent out on the calendar invite is the storage trailer. And then there's a quote from Trailers Plus at the end.
Mhm.
In Oak.
Yeah.
Let me just share my
okay,
screen.
I got it.
But the
Everybody else?
amount that we have the grant request in as, it's the 5,500 that you put down. So I'm
Okay.
guessing
55,
that,
yeah.
is if you approved 5,500 today, I'm guessing Rotary would pick up the other $16.
We would
Or,
some volunteer who would do that.
okay. Or you just need to make your motion for 5516, either way.
Here's here's the quote so you can see it.
Yeah.
In case that wasn't.
It's in there. It's all.
Right.
Okay.
But the grant
Um,
request that as I say, that typed in, it says 5,500.
5,500. Yeah, there's a $16 difference.
Right.
You can do one of two things, or three, I guess.
Well, with
Make the
that,
motion.
may I have a motion to approve $5,516 for the Rotary trailer?
I'll move.
Great, Greg. And a second,
Marcia seconds.
Marcia Roby second. And we'll go in order. Danny Steyer,
Yes.
Shelby Lamb,
Yes.
Greg Walsh,
Yes.
Matt Fogarty,
Yes.
Marcia Roby,
Yes.
Kayla Benz,
Yes.
and Dax Albrecht,
Yes.
and Lida Scoggin.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
There we go. All right. Good questions and good deliberation. All right. The next item on the agenda is another grant request. And this one is from the Greenville Cy-Hall Memorial Museum. And this came to us last week. And I'm just pulling it up. So bear with me one moment. This grant request reflects sort of the enhancements that the museum would like to make to the actual property. So as I understand it, they have enough through insurance, PG&E settlement, what have you, in order to do the actual build of the project. However, in order to do the outfitting of furnishings and technology needs for the facility, plus the exterior landscaping and some of the beautification, that's what this grant would be applied to. So to kind of get them up and over the finish line, to make it all worthwhile. Hot off the press, so the overall ask for this is $64,107.96. The museum committee did receive an additional quote from a local engineer for $6,000 additional dollars to go towards an outdoor gazebo that would go on their facility. So that's an additional $6,000. And so I would work with the grant itself has been put in a draft status just to update the budget accordingly. So I'll work with the museum committee this week to do that, but that would make the overall ask $7,107.96. So it's an additional $6,000. And since we have some museum committee members here again.
Yeah, let me clarify that the extra $6,000 is not for actually the gazebo itself. It's for the plans for
Okay.
gazebo and the plans for a 40 by 20 foot vehicle exhibit shed, so that we could exhibit 3 or 4 vehicles. We have a buggy, old truck, and some things like that. And then it would have at the end of it, a small storage shed for garden tools, maintenance tools. So that's because we have the property next door coming that was the Delizio property. So we'll be able to put a botanical garden in there next to the museum that has plants the Maidu use to eat and various native plants and that kind of thing. So this is funding that will allow us to not only do the extra landscaping and whatnot around the museum itself, but this botanical garden next door, and pay for the engineering so that we can have buildings that the building department will approve for the gazebo and the exhibit shed.
And Lindsay, LBK Engineering will be doing the plans for us, so we're staying local with our local talent.
Yay, great.
Yeah.
So additional questions or thoughts on this particular grant request for their overall sort of 3 different areas that this will be applied to that you can see in the budget. So roughly just over $25,000 for the technology needs. Displays and furnishings is almost $23,000, and then almost $16,000 for the overall landscaping. Matt, you have your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 2 questions. What's the total budget, including all this stuff, for the hotel? Sorry, for the museum. And the second question is, how big is the botanical garden? Like, how big? What's the area of the planned botanical?
Um,
The lot size is 72 wide by 100 foot deep on the lot. So that would have the a 20 by 40 vehicle exhibit, a 12 by 20 gazebo, and various paths throughout the lot size of 100 by 72, 100 feet by 72 feet.
Okay, and what's the total budget for the whole total project of the museum?
For the technology and the like furniture and display cases inside, and then
Maybe
the,
that's, do you mean the overall, like to
The
build?
overall thing, like millions.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
What's the whole
Patrick
thing?
said it's $70,107.96.
No, I'm saying, sorry.
you want the budget for the entire museum?
Yeah, what's the total museum gonna cost? Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
correct.
So at this point, we haven't.
It's at least $1 million.
Oh, it's well over $1 million. So how do we do this? We were told not to tell how much money we got from PG&E for the museum, and now you're asking me to tell you how much money we got from the museum for the museum. So I'm not sure how to handle that.
I mean, just be clear. I mean, the request is like, you've got so much. We need a little bit extra for these other things, but
Yeah,
it would be to know how much. Like, what's the budget? I mean, we've got some building.
Without
whatever.
divulging,
so
yeah, without
we're
divulging
we're over
confidentiality around your settlement, maybe like a ballpark.
with everything we have, we're over $1.5 million trying to do the building. And what we found, we felt pretty rich doing that. But as we're getting quotes on actually building this thing, we're struggling to try to get it built with all the money we have. So I can tell you it's over $1.5 million. It's not a lot over $1.5 million. And that includes all of our savings and everything else, any money that the museum has in their budget.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, as far as yeah, as detailed as they can,
Yeah.
as Cass can say. So that's fine. Yeah.
I do think that that is a fair question. And while I appreciate, I'm not sure who, I'm sure people do want to keep their settlements private, but when you are requesting money from an entity that is 100% transparent and where all their donations are going, we've always asked organizations for how much insurance money did you receive? How much PG&E money did you receive? What's the budget of what you want to spend? Because I feel like a lot of times organizations get money and they think, okay, we're never going to get any more money again. So we've got to keep this in reserves and we've got to use this for the next 10 years to keep our organization going, which can all be really good fiscal decisions. But I think as funders, it's important to know what other money has come into a project and what are you giving an organization money because they want to have money set aside so they've got reserves, and if so, I mean, we've heard groups say that, but that's why we've always asked what, even for we're not doing this with the Dixie Fire, but with the campfire, we ask what are people's PG&E settlements, and we want to know what that settlement is, and we want to know how much money you got from insurance, because if you're going to use charitable dollars on a project, it's important you know all those pieces.
So but on that, I do know that in a lot of the cases, PG&E has had recipients sign a non-disclosure, right? So I understand, depending on the entity, whether it be a nonprofit or a public entity, there's, definitely for something like the CSD or the IVRPD that are special districts, they have a public responsibility to talk about the funds that they've received. If this is going to push comes to shove type of thing, then I would recommend going back to your whoever represented you to get clarification on what you can and cannot divulge, so that you're not in violation of your agreement.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I can tell you.
let me, as also recipient and having the NDAs and such too, I'm going to push back also with Kes and say, hey, basically what I would say is between with just strictly the insurance funds, we could have never rebuilt it and furnished our house. We had to get additional funds in order from PG&E to complete that. And so, we're not living high on the hog. So I think some integrity of being able to say that without having to put all the cards on the table, especially, this is a public forum here that people can take and run with that money information. So I guess this is kind of where I understand Kim's concern here, and being and maybe if we say that this Greenville Sci Hall Museum is a public entity and it should disclose, I don't know, but this is a very touchy ground, and I understand where the Greenville Sci Hall Museum would prefer to hold their cards closer to their vest and
Well,
just
I
request
would
for
say
trust.
I'm willing to go back to the museum board and explain the situation if that's what you need. But what I've just told you is what we have. We're struggling to just try to build the building. We would like to have what, as Kim was talking about, we'd like to have 10 years of reserves to run the museum, but it doesn't look like we're going to have anything left to run the museum. We're just going to be trying to, as we did before, struggle on with whatever we can raise through donations to keep the museum going after we get this building built. So you tell me if you want me to go back, I can see about getting the okay to give you exact dollars. But what you have is pretty close to what we have.
And it's what you guys are comfortable with as a committee.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
I don't need to know exact amounts.
Okay.
I was told by PG&E too that we couldn't tell how much that we got from them.
Yeah. And I think, and I just want to clarify, that's like for a private entity.
Yeah.
But if you were coming to a charitable organizations and asking, then people share, this is how many resources I have to rebuild my house. And if you're expecting a charity to give you $100,000 to rebuild your personal property, they want to know, oh, do you have $1 million in the bank, $2 million in the bank? How, that type of thing. So, but
It's a reasonable question. So I can give you as much as I've given you, or I can go back and ask for the okay to give you exact dollars. Either way.
Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, Kester said it's like just a little bit above 1.5. Just imagine a number a little bit above 1.5. That's close enough for me. But
Okay.
but coming back to the funds, given that the budget, the actual build budget, is really close, like, well, there's still like stuff happening on that side in terms of what will get built, what can afford and stuff. Will this 70,000 be dedicated to this lot for this building and these plans and this botanical garden, or will it be potentially used for exhibit for things that are not on that? Sorry, they've got technology and stuff, but could it be used for the building or some ADA stuff or other things? Or is it flexible, or is it just those things you had on that list?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think maybe if we were able to do everything here and we had anything left over, then maybe you could do something extra for the museum. But the intention here is that this money would be allocated specifically for the things on this list.
And Kim, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, in the grant agreement, there can be safeguards applied in the grant agreement that stipulate that the money that has been requested for these specific things are used for those things, right? And that unless there is some type of additional conversation around, okay, they came in under their $70,000 budget for technology needs, furnishings, and landscaping, then at that point, if there is a remaining dollar amount left over, then they would have to ask for it to be redistributed to some other part of their project. and I'm asking, like, is that something that can be defined in the grant agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Kes, you guys have provided an incredibly detailed budget here, down to kind of almost to the cent on these different things. And we could either categorize the budget more broadly that, and I think you do at some point where you talk about technology versus displays or those types of things. So I think as long as we just put a budget together that kind of gives you the wiggle room to, that if all of a sudden you get a smart TV display and it doesn't, it's like 500 instead of 700, then that money could be used because if you need to buy another chair, we could just put in there that it's for, materials, items, supplies utilized in the museum.
That would be great. We just didn't want to come to you with a budget that was so general that you'd look at it and say, all this money for technology, what are you going to do? And so we wanted to give you what we intend to do here.
In terms of saying exactly what you're going to do versus giving more wiggle room, I would definitely suggest more wiggle room given where you're at in the project, and just to trust whatever. I mean, even 70 grand to the general fund for me is more valuable for the museum than 70,000 in all these tiny little categories, little budgets. Because that decision was made in 2025 and now it's 2027, and like everything's changed for me. You want to do something different, and it just creates extra bureaucracy. Like, we're not going to oppose you spending it on an ADA ramp versus a technology thing. I don't think anyone here care if you're like, hey, we really need this thing versus that thing when it comes down, because it's going to be, you're going to spend this money in I mean, it's probably a couple of years time, So I would suggest that we do as much wiggle room as we can in terms of them not having to require coming back to us and accounting and all that, like as minimal as we can, like more general fund to the general fund with the idea that it'll be used for something like this. But if you guys are like, whatever, we got to do it for this instead of that, that's cool as well. Just it's more valuable, a grant is more valuable for you guys with the freedom to do what you need to do versus these tiny buckets.
It's great for us if you're willing to trust us with your funds.
Given that, I think that your budget is really reasonable for what you're asking for.
Yeah, and in the end, when you do your final follow-up report, you kind of say, this is how much money we spent in technology, this is how much money we spent on furnishing, this is how much money we spent on landscaping, and this is why things are set up this way. If all of a sudden an auditor has issues with it, they'll come back to you and say, I want to see your receipts. We don't want to see all your receipts. You guys keep your receipts.
All right. Well,
Danny'd probably like to see your
receipts.
receipts.
I got a couple fun questions. All right, fun questions. So, fun question I have. So, when's groundbreaking? You guys had a target on when you might get a approval and we could have a groundbreaking?
About a month ago, the building department said that they could finish this in their part in 6 to 8 weeks. And contractors have said, as soon as you get approval, we're ready to go. So we hope to know within the next week and a half who the contractor will be. But each of the contractors that we've had bids from said they can start. As soon as they get approval from the building department, they can go.
Can there be a shovel in the ground for gold diggers?
No. I don't think that we can do it in that's what, a week away, a week and a half, 2 weeks away.
2 weeks.
That's possible, but unlikely.
Well, I'm just thinking, would you have the plans back, and once you have the plans approved and such, then you could do a symbolic shovel, correct?
That'd be great if we could do it. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
I mean, do you have drawings?
Oh yeah, they're in. The building department's been looking at them for 4 weeks, but they said 6 to 8 weeks. So Gold Digger Days would be the very first we could possibly expect them. And the contractor said, as soon as you get approval.
Yeah, twist their arm, say we need approval so we can celebrate for Gold Digger.
Yeah.
Exciting.
But then I have another semi-serious and semi question. How do you, and I have vested interest in this question, how do you qualify and find out who the veterans are that you have bricks for?
Well, we have the bricks
Yeah, the names are all on the bricks.
and we
I
saved the
understand,
bricks.
but you know, I haven't gone to inspect the bricks, but I mean, you know, how do we know that all veterans in Greenville or Taylorsville or Crescent or is it Indian Valley are on the bricks?
Oh, they aren't. We had as many as we could get before the fire, and we haven't done any since then. We know that there are some other veterans out there that that we didn't have bricks for.
Yeah, I guess the question: how do you find veterans, or how do you?
Well,
And so,
actually,
like,
so,
so is my name on the brick? Is my name on the brick? Are my brothers' names on the
You know,
brick?
I
Is my
bet we
dad's
could-
name on the brick?
So I bet
Okay.
you we could work with the County Vet Services Office, who maintains a database of Plymouth County veterans, and that might get us part of the way there. If and when we get to that point where the museum is able to kind of continue out their walkway, but we do have some resources here in county that might be able to help with that.
Yeah, just a question there, because how you qualifying to make sure they're all accounted for.
We know that they're
And
not.
even you know, yeah, some people are still active duty or reserve duty, so they don't get to get counted until they're veterans.
That's right. You got to get that DD 214.
Exactly. All right, I'm done.
Okay, and with that, may I have a motion to approve $70,107.96 to the Greenville Cy-Hall Memorial Museum for their grant request?
I so motion, but I just wanted to add some wiggle room in there for them to do as they want with so to make it general versus specific.
Okay.
Kes, do you have a fund that would be like the general fund versus, I mean, do you
Yes.
think about that?
But the biggest thing is going to be how you word this, because we will spend the money according to the way you word this motion. So if you put this in, asking us to, however you want to do it, we'll do the best we can to make it, to do it according to the way you've set it up.
I mean, my suggestion would just.
As long as the money currently applies back to the request that you've actually submitted, and then based off of what Kim just said with regard to the grant follow-up and the reporting.
If you want to have us spend it within the categories that we've provided, maybe that's a better way, rather than having the list with the exact amount of money that.
Yeah, I think it's implied based off of the grant proposal that's been submitted though.
Yeah.
You know, as the $70,107.96 is going towards your grant proposal.
And I guess, Kest, if it doesn't mess you guys up too much, since it doesn't sound like you all are looking to micromanage this grant, my recommendation would be to do it in a round number, 70,000, 71,000. And Kest, I could work with you on the categories. And then and we know now that you have money that, you know, if you're short a couple dollars here or there, you know, this is a huge budget to do this project. So I think it would make more sense, you know, if you, you know, we could work on, you know, how much of this is technology, how much is display and furnishings, and how much is landscaping. Or you could just say that you approve a grant to this project for technology, display furnishings, and landscaping, and just leave it at that. And as long as it fits into one of those categories, you all are good to go with it. That could be the simplest. But I wouldn't go down to the cent if we're not going to track it to the
So
cent.
I'd recommend then going up to $71,000, just to add a little bit of that flexibility.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
So may I have a motion to approve a grant request to the Greenville Cy-Hall Memorial Museum for $71,000 to be attributed to technology, furniture, and landscaping?
I would like to make a motion for that to do $71,000 for technology and landscaping, and what was the other one?
Furniture.
Furniture.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank
That's
you,
great.
Martha. And a second,
Second,
Lyda Scoggin, thank you. Greg Walsh,
Yes, aye.
Danny Starr,
Yes.
Marcia Roby,
Yes.
Shelby Lamb,
Yes.
Matt Fogarty,
Yes.
Dax Albrecht,
Yes.
and Lyda Scoggin.
yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yay.
So it was
That's wonderful.
Thanks for partnering with us.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for working so hard to get your build to this point, because I know it's difficult to get through all the funding streams, and then just the actual engineering and design, and then getting to the county and so on and so forth. So thank you for your committee that's been working on this for a very long time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Moving on to the next item, a little bit ahead of schedule. Again, we tabled the Plymouth Sun grant request. And in case you didn't hear at the beginning of the meeting, but I will be meeting with them on Friday to just clarify the items around. There's some additional salary lines that they had in their budget with regard to the editors. So they're going to clarify that, as well as what the overall grant request is for, and the time duration. So it looks like it's 2 years, and the overall grant request would be for $141,000. However, they're looking for matching funds. So roughly $70,500 from Dixie Fire Collaborative and the North Valley Community Foundation. I did express to them on the phone that and especially what we just talked about for the CSD, the amount of money that North Valley has in order to contribute is getting down to zero at this point. Not a lot of money left from North Valley Community Foundation to always be able to match an even 50-50. The basic background of their grant, and this is something by all means you can take a look at it, but what they're looking at doing is to hire a full-time reporter that's focused on disaster recovery. So not just what the Dixie Fire Collaborative is doing. It's really more about what the county's doing. The county still has yet to hire a long-term recovery coordinator, but this summer they intend to adopt their long-term recovery plan, and just to continue having a dedicated reporter on disaster recovery, and also where disaster recovery intersects with other community topics, whether that be the school system, their own county management, the vacancies of positions that they have, and then being able to get more information out to the public from the department directors on what their individual departments either did, are, or intend to do as it relates to recovery projects. A lot of that information has been coming through Tracy Ferguson, the planning director, and she's also been dual-hatted as the disaster recovery coordinator for the county ever since things got started. And so hopefully with the new position that they hopefully are able to fill, then we'd be looking to that person to be able to kind of round out some of that information. Danny, you have your hand up?
Yeah, the question is, and I think you're gonna go ask them that, but I was confused by the fact that they said they were asking for additional funds from North Valley. So it seemed like the need then would be 141,886 as opposed to the 70,000 number. And so I think that's what you're gonna get clarification on, and hopefully get them have a cleaner proposal.
Yep,
right?
that's exactly, yeah, that's exactly the topic. And then there was another piece to that as well. Oh, so they've also indicated that there's a organization called Reporters for America that they intend to, in order to sustain this position, that they can apply to a grant. They missed the grant cycle last year, and then when they were going to apply this year, there's a stipulation that it sounds like maybe that the full-time position already needs to be established, existing, before they can do that. It doesn't create a position for you. So that's
right. Yeah, and but I'm kind of a little hesitant on the naming of recovery reporter, disaster recovery reporter. I understand that's we're reacting to that, but almost 4 years in, we're saying disaster recovery reporter when the need has been all along, and so I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. It's a reaction, and I know exactly what they're doing as far as replacing a channel, an information channel. They're wanting to provide a reliable, accurate information channel, and I wholeheartedly agree with that, and the need for it as an area tries to recover, it's needed. But I think we kind of want to help them maybe label it something for a sustainable report, recovery and sustainability, maybe, and even saying that's what kind of we're looking at, so they can get their funding further down the road for this, not just a short-term need.
Yeah, and I think some of that is a reflection of just, I think this summer they're going to come in, it'll be their second anniversary. So they formed in 2023. So in the summer of 2023, 2 years after the actual Dixie fire. And so I think some of that's a reflection of them just trying to get their feet underneath them and just regular, like general reporting. And now trying to, what it sounds like is that they're spread kind of thinly. So, if somebody can be dedicated on these things, on these topics, just to vet and provide credible information that's been, verified and things of that nature. So, but we'll hear more about that in 2 weeks. I just wanted to kind of give you a little, some general background on it, and then we'll continue to press. So, all right. So moving on to committee member updates. Danny, do you want to elaborate on anything with regard to the budget information or the treasurer's report that you sent out last week?
Not a whole lot. I just trust people have read that and looked at it. I was prepared to say, based upon proposals, grant requests and such, what we were looking at as far as going forward. But since the Plymouth Sun grant request is pulled off for reworking, I could just looking at what we've approved today, we're approved $139,623.96 in grants, and that leaves us with an available funds of $356,895.81 of available funds. But if we get the $304,000 that we have sitting out there, and part of it's for the rancheria and some other funds that we have there, say for the communications position that we have, that will bring us up to, we have $661,215.81 of funds still available. So that would be my report.
Thank you.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to, outside of your treasurer's report, anything else?
No, but it's kind of nice to be back on this continent, but I sure did like the other continent. I was wandering around for 6 to 7 weeks, so it's and the seafood and such is quite nice when you're right close to the coasts in Spain or Portugal. So I highly advise getting there if you can.
Sounds pretty good. I'll hop right on that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Dave. Greg, do you have anything for the team?
Gold Digger seems to be progressing. Cass, do you need any help for cleaning up Sammy's lot?
Sure. We're working on that tomorrow morning.
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday, excuse me.
Okay, I had it on Wednesday.
Let's see, we have a 7 o'clock meeting with the Rotary Board, and I think at 7:30 we're starting to work on parking strips and Sammy's lot. So if you feel like working with us that morning, it'd be great.
All right. It's like,
Well, and any other time you want to go down there, if we don't have it cleaned up, then sure.
yeah, no, I think I want to help out. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I talked to Bill Cook today. Since the parking lot is, I mean, this whole thing has been where to put the car show, which seems to be shaping up. Since the parking lot is paved, I'm thinking that we don't have to close off everything all day long on Main Street. And he's tomorrow or tonight, he has a meeting with the Legion, and so they're going to find out if we can have the car show in their parking lot, which would be great, and we could just close off part of the street, maybe in front of the Legion, that stretch of property, in case we have more people showing up. But I think we might have a good amount of people show up. I mean, more than, so that would be great. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's weird that how the responses have been slow in coming in, but I still feel really good about it. Like, I think that it's a lot of, okay, well, we're through the 4th of July, and now, we're on to the next thing. And, and I think a lot of people just show up, so it's been an interesting process, but I think we're going to be great. So.
Good, yeah. And so we had last meeting on Thursday, we had Dave and Tony Preston join us representing the Rotary, talked about the contributions at Sammy's lot and some of the road guard duty during the parade. So thank you for Rotary's contribution there.
Yeah.
We'll be meeting again at 6 on Thursday to continue to just kind of talk about, keep rounding out these details as we get closer to the day's event. So,
but the cleanup is Wednesday morning for Sammy's lot.
Correct.
7:30.
Okay.
Great. Marcia, do you have anything that you'd like to talk to the team about?
I'm going to meet with Kevin Goss this week, and we're going to talk about the dead trees on Main Street, on the hill, that are still there, that are so ugly. Anyway, and then also, how much longer do we get you as our fearless leader?
Yeah, that's a good question. So still, the position was funded until September of this year.
Okay.
But in talking with Kim, they're still in the Dixie Fire Coordinator Fund. So there was 2 years ago, the steering committee set aside money for the coordinator fund, and so that's what pays me, and then that also provides a small operating budget. And so Kim and I were just talking about that this morning, that fund won't be depleted. It's not as if like August 31st, like all that money has been expended and that's it. So there is money still left in that fund. I think Kim, you said something around $70,000.
Yeah, I think the balance is something like that. Some of the expenses we anticipated, you were able to be much more thrifty than thought. So let's see, that fund as of this morning was, about $75,000. So
there's still some remaining expenses for rent and utilities and things like that, plus the salary as I get paid through North Valley Community Foundation. So one of the, by the meeting on the 21st, hopefully have an idea sketched out to be able to maybe, so Plymouth Rural Services still has money left over that they either are going to give back if nothing can be done with it, or that can be redistributed as well. And one of the things I've been talking with them about since last November, it's been a long time, is the potential to continue to have a resource center here in Greenville as opposed to where it was in Crescent Mills. If that's something that can happen here, it also, the resource coordinator's hours wouldn't need to be as great as maybe it once was. So a recommendation that I would make to you all is that one of the resource coordinators because they would like to staff that with 2 people just because they like people working in pairs just for security and safety and things like that. But that some of the hours of that person could be devoted to being an admin assistant for the steering committee to continue to hear grant requests as they come to you, to be able to email back and forth with Kim, email with all of you all to set up the meetings with the grant requests. And some of that is also depending on where that the Dixie Fire Fund is, as Danny just said. What was that dollar amount? Roughly about $350,000 available for additional funding.
That's what he said.
I have to unmute here. Actually, we had 356,895. However, we have to push back into that 300,000 that was reserved right now for the Rancheria. So whether or not, so that, push that back in, plus some of the IT funds that were closer to a $661,000 number.
Okay.
And at least I haven't heard from the Rancheria that they don't want our loans anymore. Right now, they're saying they still want and need the loans. Hopefully they won't, but that's getting kind of tough because you want to make sure this money gets out into the community. So, at some point we will need to discuss with them. We don't have anything written on those loans. It was just a verbal agreement.
Exactly. One other point there too, we do have $36,000 that was allocated to for the business marketing grant and signage grant that grant has not been issued yet. We set aside money for that, but I haven't seen a grant payout through North Valley.
Let me follow up. Was that to the remind me, where'd that grant go? Did it go to the chamber, or were you guys paying expenses directly of signs directly?
I went to the chamber. I thought they received that already.
Well, I haven't seen a grant award for that yet. I've got the reserve, but I have not seen a grant award of that. I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
It's sitting there in the committed column.
Yeah. But back to the
Your future.
yeah, so then with regard to the money that's still in the Dixie Fire Coordinator Fund, if some of that can go back into the general fund, so if there's $75,000 left, if that doesn't all go towards staffing and expenses, then that would be money that could be then utilized for another grant request. Is a recommendation. And so then if it's just part-time hours from an individual that stays connected with you all and Kim to be able to process the grant requests that theoretically would continue to come in through the remainder of this calendar year. Right. So more not a very good answer, Marcia, but those are just a couple of the kind of the thoughts of trying to kind of think a few months ahead of how this could go in a smooth transition.
Right.
And
that's a yeah. Sorry,
means, like if you have be thinking about this as well. And we can continue to discuss if someone's got some or actually whatever ideas you have, so we can continue to brainstorm what the best case scenario is.
Yeah, the thing is, we need, I believe, from my point of view, we need a coordinator or somebody, a head for the committee, if you will.
Well, what I was kind of hoping was that this county position would have been hired by now, so that at least when it came to like the larger scale county projects, if that person is the disaster recovery coordinator, there doesn't need to be a couple people fighting at the trough, so if that person, my recommendation would be that person comes to at least a meeting a month with the steering committee, just for updates and to stay connected. So that you all know what the county's working on, and then they all know what you're working on, so that there's just more communication around that, so there's not nobody stepping on toes and whatnot, and people can work on different projects that are more consistent with what it is that they do. So I was sort of crossing my fingers that that person would have already been identified and that I could make that recommendation to he or she that, that might be a good way to have still a long-term recovery coordinator that's still connected to the community.
Good idea.
And that person would be around for at least 3 years based off of the contract that the county is developing. So.
I guess I still have a question and how the DFC exists or not or what goes on. And I know you're their primary coordinator as such though, and then the question outside too is how long is everybody's term that are currently, steering committees, and how long do we expect people around, and who's gonna coordinate the steering committee, if you will?
Well, before this position existed, correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon Kest, but some of that was done internally. With
Sue Weber volunteered,
Yeah, and Clint.
and Clint, right?
and then there was also, I think there was a secretary position as well, right, Lana?
I don't know.
I think there was a secretary position identified, but
Oh, somebody did some of the clerical work, kind of.
yeah, so that, I mean, that is also another topic that we could address to figure out, roles and responsibilities internal to the team for the next, 3 to 6 months.
Oh, and Jane would set up the meetings.
All right, thank you, Marcia. Matt Fogarty.
So the hotel and store project's going great. So we should be opening the store in the next few weeks and the hotel by the end of the year. That's all looking good. And then I'm working on a dispensary as well. So I'm meeting with Tracy tomorrow at the planning department. We're on second draft of a ordinance which would legalize dispensaries in Plymouth County. And then also I'm working on a museum for the back of the hotel. So I'm trying to get some kind of fiscal sponsorship deal to allow that to raise money as a non-profit. So that would be a third museum for Indian Valley. So I'm probably going to be coming to the DFC with 3 grants. So potential one for Crescent Museum, if I can get a sponsor. One for the second version of the sign grant. So tonight I'm talking to the Chamber of Commerce, but basically the sign grant was like 30 grand or 36 grand, something like that. Most of the money's been spent. It's funny that it hasn't gone across, but anyway, most of the money's been
That's what I think it has.
yeah, something, but who knows? But the most of the money's been spent. The chamber money's been spent, and you can see the signs around Indian Valley. There's a lot of evidence in Taylorsville, Greenville, Pleasant Mills. So that's going really well. So I'm going to be coming to DFC on. Well, I'm going to work with the chamber on the next grant. So I have to get Kira to write the grant.
Yes, and I communicated a little bit with Kira about that if that was going to happen, that it's not just like an add-on of the same grant.
Sure, it would be a new grant, right?
Just so it can be tracked properly.
Yeah. So that's something that I expect to see very soon. And then also I'm talking to Clint about Clint's under the Innovation Hub has set up a fund. There's like no money in it, or $1,000 or something like that. Anyway, for kind of like an investment fund, and I'm going to try and get some money from the chamber into that fund, basically a fund to fund local businesses. And there may be opportunities for DFC to put money into that fund. It would be DFC would be funding a non-profit, which would be funding or lending or somehow getting money for local business that want to expand or start or whatever. So I don't know if it's possible because DFC's got a lot of restrictions, but DFC can give it to a non-profit who can give it to or lend it to companies. Anyway, that's the third thing. So potentially come into the 3 things here: the museum, the BizDes fund with Clint potentially, and then the second version of the sign grant.
Hey, Matt, are there any signs that are for businesses that are actually up?
Oh, there is, yeah. So if you're in Taylorsville, the pizza place, and then if you're in Crescent Mills, my store, that sign was
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and then in Greenville, Patrick, what's in Greenville that's being paid for? Let's put this up now.
Well, there's signs that have been paid for, but they're not up yet. So Rugged Woodworks, that's Sandy Hampton's, hers is still in the works. Indian Valley Butchers in Taylorsville, they'll have a sign up here soon.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Uh, the Hunter Hardware, they have a sign that they're developing with Rugged Woodworks as well. I don't think it's done yet. I think Sandy or Susie's saving it because they've talked about moving back over to their Main Street location. So she's gonna put it up there. Who else? Evergreen has not taken advantage yet of the opportunity. So I think if there's a second round, that might be an opportunity to work with them again to see if that's something that they want to do. But I'll get a written roll-up of where everything is from Josie Litchfield, who's been doing some of the marketing components of it. And I'll send that all up to you this week. She had a pretty good description of where everybody is in the process.
So the Evergreen just did not get back to you with what they needed or wanted.
Correct, yeah.
I'll bug them about that.
Yeah, no problem. I gave them a couple suggestions of maybe some things that they might want to utilize. But if the chamber's able to do like a second round sort of supplemental or something, that might be an opportunity. Oh, Alicia Hamrick's Zenden, her yoga studio, I know that she got a sign or two.
In Crescent Mills, the Crescent store, the Crescent Country, she's got a grant. She's working with someone to update her sign.
Thanks for that chat post there, Kim. Dan, I don't know if you saw that, but Kim just posted in the chat that it looked like on April 2nd, the chamber received $36,000. They were paid that money. Okay, thanks, Matt, and thanks for your question, Marcia. Shelby, any updates for the team?
Yeah, so we conduct a summer youth camp for our local Maidu youth every year at Roundhouse Council. And that's been going on for a few weeks, and it's been really positive. We had a cultural event this last week, and there was actually 70 youth that participated. Most of them were actually from Susanville. And so we had a small number here from Indian Valley. But it was really good. At that activity, they taught some of the kids some of the traditional Maidu songs, and it was really positive. And then coming up on the July 15th, Roundhouse Council is going to host what we call a big time, and it's just a celebration of singing, traditional mountain Maidu singing. And we'll have guests from other tribes down in the valley and different parts of the North State. We had our big time at the Greenville campground the last few years, but we're going to have it at the Roundhouse location for the summer. So yeah, good stuff happening, good positive stuff. And these events, we always term them and consider them as health and wellness because it brings different parts of our community together, and it helps us perpetuate and share some of our culture. So very excited about that.
That's great. Did you say the 15th?
Yeah, July 15th.
July 15th. So that's Tuesday, July 15th.
Well, I think it's.
Is that at the Roundhouse?
Yeah, Roundhouse.
Thursday?
I've got it. July 15th looks like a Tuesday to me.
I'll have to, I need to double check on the date, and I'll get that. I'll share that with the group.
Yeah, let us know.
That's great. And where was the youth camp held?
I was at Roundhouse.
Okay. Awesome.
The question was, Shelby, do you think the Roundhouse would be interested in having a sign paid for by the sign grant?
Possibly. I can ask the staff and the board. but I think, yeah, we might be interested in having a sign.
That'd be great.
Actually, it looks like somebody did send me a flyer for it, and I just found it. Roundhouse Big Time Event, August 15th, 2025, from 11
Oh.
a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah, I meant August 15th. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no
correction.
problem. So Friday, August 15th. Got it. Okay, cool. Great. Thanks, Shelby. Dax, anything for the team?
Nope, nothing new from me.
Okay. Anything new on the water project at Indian Falls?
I'm going to be working on that this week with Terry and hopefully get a proposal to the committee next, week or so, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And Lida,
I don't have anything.
nothing for the team? All right. All right. Any remaining questions, comments, concerns?
Of course. And it should have been public comment, but just listening to you as you're talking about the budget and whatnot, our first build to sell house is being assembled this afternoon and should be hopefully ready for its first inspection on Wednesday. I like Matt's ideas about supporting businesses, but the other thing we have to get in Greenville is houses and people. And so once again, I would encourage you to give $300,000 to the Almanor Foundation so that they can build another 20 houses. And once we get this one built, we'll just use the money to build the next one and use that money to build the next one. And if we have 2 or 3 going at the same time, that'd just put more houses in Greenville and bring more people here more quickly. So, and if you were actually to consider that, I'd be happy to help with writing whatever grant needs to go in or whatever paperwork you need so that you seriously consider that.
Are these prefabs or stick built? I mean,
They're not. They're modular homes. They're 2x6 construction. They meet the WUI standards. We're putting a fairly large front porch on them, so they don't just look like a rectangular box. So 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses, we're attempting to sell them for $275,000, which is about $230 a square foot. And the least we're going to get building stick built is they're up over 400 now and having trouble doing that. So, do I want every building in Greenville to be a modular? No, but we've got to get people here somehow. And that's one way we can do it. And basically the people that move in pay for the next house and just keeps going.
I'll push back on the $400 a square foot for a rebuild. That's not exactly true. It all depends on who you get to build and how you build it. Okay.
True. That's true. If you can use less expensive finishes and whatnot, you can bring the price down.
Well, these are definitely things to consider. And I think, with the money that we've already given that you all, the steering committee is actually already given to the Almanor Foundation, which if you recall is in December, $600,000 that went to the Almanor Foundation. The clock is ticking on that, on that contribution, with regard to having additional investment into that program. And so that's something that will need to be looked at again. If they're not able to get the additional investment as was described, then that money would be coming back. And maybe this is a redistribution again, that it can be applied to something that, as Kes said, they are through the process and they're in the construction process right now.
Right.
So.
And I prefer stick built houses, but we have to do something that people can afford, especially young families we want them to come here, they've got to be able to pay for them. So my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
It's definitely something to think about.
What's that?
I said it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we can't bring them down from Ingo Mine anymore because they're all been all brought down. So anyway.
It's true. Brought down and burned up.
Yeah.
Except
Yeah.
for
Yep.
Okay.
mean-
If there's nothing else, may I please have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I'm going to adjourn today's meeting.
All right. Thank you, Lida.
Keston, Sherry, can you stay on for just a minute with Patrick? I just have some housekeeping details.
Sure.
Sure.
I'd
Before
like to
you say
second
that.
the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Danny. All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
Everybody.
Everyone. Bye.
Alrighty. Care.